All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So nice to see you all. Thank you so much for joining. And I'm so excited for this conversation that we are going to have today. My name is Michelle Marfo. I go by she, her pronouns. And we are going to get started in just about a minute or two. In the interim, just so you all know, we do have closed captioning, and you can find this under the More tab, Language and Speech, and turn on live captions. Just know that this is a webinar format, so your cameras and microphones are turned off for this event. You are more than welcome to use the chat function. I think someone has posted in the chat to say hello. And we also have a Q&A section for our guest speakers if you have any questions for them. We'll go over the slide again in a minute or two, but just wanted to say hello and welcome. All right, so I think we'll get started because we have a great conversation waiting for us today with wonderful panelists and our moderators. So we will get started. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Today we are doing our career conversations on breaking the mold, navigating professionalism and authenticity from an equity deserving group. If you are looking again for some closed captioning, you will find it under the More tab, Language and Speech, and turn on live captions. This event is in a webinar format, which means that when you joined, your cameras and your microphones were turned off. But we do have a chat feature where you are more than welcome to share the conversation and chat with each other. And we also have a special place for any questions that you may have for our wonderful panelists. You'll find that under the Q&A feature where you can ask your question directly to anyone on our panelists today. And just note that this session is going to be recorded and posting in the upcoming weeks on our career event page website. Again, my name is Michelle Marfo. I go by she, her pronouns, and I'm a career and student success advisor here at Humber Polytechnic, working with students in Faculty of Health Sciences and Wellness. And welcome, welcome again. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll move over to the next slide. And I would highly encourage everyone to just say hello, introduce yourself in the chat. I said hello already, so hi again. And we're so excited to have you here with us today. So we'll go on to the next slide because we do want to take a moment to do our Humber Polytechnic land acknowledgement, and we have a short video, and we would love for you to just watch this video with us today.
We would like to begin by acknowledging the land in which we gather and on which the region of Peel and City of Toronto operates, is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. For thousands of years, Indigenous people inhabited and cared for this land and continue to do so today. In particular, we acknowledge the territory of the Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Ojibwa Chippewa peoples, the land that is home to the Métis, and most recently, the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land, and by doing so, give our respect to its first inhabitants.
Right, thank you for watching that video. We always want to take a moment to acknowledge the lands that we work on and walk on every day. So here on the slide, we have something here specific to Humber. Some people might have seen this before, but we have our Humber Learning Outcomes, also known as HLO. Humber Learning Outcomes are essential for equipping students with the skills and perspectives they need to succeed as global citizens and professionals. Today's presentation will integrate the following three mindsets to enhancing today's workshop and learning environment. And today we will be focusing on three key areas. The first one being equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. An equity, diversity, and inclusion and belonging mindset enables us to create a fair, just, and inclusive world. Communication. Communication skills enable individuals to convey information effectively. And lastly, professionalism. Professionalism enables an individual to exhibit behavior and actions that enhance personal reputation and contribute positively to success in the workplace. So you might have seen these on maybe some of your course outlines, but this is something is specific to Humber that we would love to share. And we've also picked out some learning outcomes that work well with our presentation today. And I'm now going to pass it over to Nafisa, who's going to be talking more about what we have coming up in our presentation today. Over to you.
Thank you, Michelle. I was going to say good morning. Good day, everyone. My name is Nafisa Kadir. I'm the manager for advice and services here at Humber. My pronouns are she and her. And on the next slide, we will take a thank you, Nathan. So thank you, Michelle, for uploading the HLOs or the Humber Learning Outcome. One of the ways that we can start to integrate the Humber Learning Outcomes mentioned by Michelle, start with cultivating a safe space today. We encourage you to use the Q&A function on the Teams chat, so the chat that you're on, to capture all your great questions. And I know that you're going to do your best to ensure that it's polite and respectful. And if you're anything like me, what you're going to do probably is to reread those questions and those comments a few times before hitting send. And so that we ask you to remember, of course, to consider intention versus your impact. And even though you may not mean to be rude or dismissive, it may be perceived to do so. Okay. A few other housekeeping tips. Our backgrounds, the media that we consume, are all things that influence our viewpoints. And today we welcome multiple viewpoints. This goes hand in hand with reflection. So please work to recognize your privilege or privileges. We encourage you to take risks, lean in to discomfort, and we know that that is sometimes difficult for some. So we ask that you take care of yourself and be kind to yourself. And if you need time to step away from the screen or step back, please do so, and step back and notice any team or group dynamics. Please challenge, of course, with care. And most importantly, we ask you that it's, to practice active listening and maintain confidentiality if any names are shared with us here today. Now, I'm well aware of my position before getting this panel started. I am standing between you and the housekeeping items and you and this amazing panel. So if we go to the next slide, what I'll do is to share a brief description with you in terms of equity deserving groups. And this description, of course, or this definition comes from the Humber Brandon website. Equity deserving and equity owned groups refer to communities that were historically and who are currently underrepresented and underserved. These groups include women, persons with disability, racialized persons, people who identify as 2S LGBTQ+, including persons with diverse sexual orientation and gender expressions. Now, without further ado, I'm going to pass it along to Jonathan. If we go over to the next slide, thank you.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Fuentes. I am the strategist in the Office of EDIB, and I have the pleasure today of introducing our moderator, Nisha Sudharan.
Hi, everyone.
Nisha is a fourth-year Justice Studies student at the University of Guelph Humber and a passionate student advocate with Ignite. She has held leadership roles with Alpha Phi Sigma and the pre-law moot team, while also working in student life and recruitment. Committed to justice research, she has explored topics like restorative justice, sexual assault, and gender-based violence, with her team's findings set to be presented in Denver in 2025. That sounds super exciting. As an advocate She champions issues like food insecurity, financial security, and work integrated learning, striving to create impactful change for students. Naisha, it's a pleasure having you as our moderator, and I'll hand it over to you to take it away.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, for the warm introduction. Good afternoon, faculty, students, friends, and peers. My name is Naisha, and it is a pleasure to be your student moderator or moderator for today's career conversation, Breaking the Mold event today. It is an absolute pleasure to be here, not only because I love to engage with people, but also because I get to hear the stories and advice of the panelists here. Before I begin, I'd like to say a little bit of background on who these women are and what they do. Danny, yeah, so I'm going to begin with Danny and then move over to Martina. So Danny Gomex Ortega is a leader with a passion to empower others to create more inclusive spaces. She has led strategies to and equity across 50 plus countries, which is amazing, through her work with companies in various sectors, including Loblaws Companies Limited, McCain Foods, and most recently, Tiny Eye Therapy Services. Danny also brings extensive community organization experience through past roles in Toronto PFLAG and Dignity Network Canada. And most recently, Danny finished her Master's of Business Administration. Huge round of applause. Amazing work, Danny. And was featured in the book of Global Changemakers for a Feminist Future by Dr. Gail Kimball. Danny's work and commitment to inclusion are shaped by her lived experience as a Latin immigrant and transgender woman with an invisible disability. Thank you so much, Danny. I'm going to move on to Daniela and Martina for their introductions, and then I will come back to icebreakers. Daniela Chang Gardner is a registered psychotherapist and founder of ROP Mental Health Services, a growing psychotherapy practice specializing in relational therapy, trauma healing, professional well-being. And with over 15 years of experience in social work, education, and mental health, Daniela has navigated the complexities of balancing professionalism with authenticity. A former lecturer and career coordinator at Guelph Humber, Danielle understands the pressures of conforming to traditional professional standards while also staying true to one's identity. Oh my gosh, you're a GH student, or was. That makes me so happy. Through her work in therapy, corporate training, and community events, she empowers individuals to embrace their lived experiences and as their strengths rather than obstacles. And last but not least, Martina Douglas is currently the Director of Community, Culture, and Belonging at TMU's new School of Medicine. Previously, she held an inaugural role as Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at U of T's Faculty of Information. As a director, Martina works collaboratively with stakeholders to develop and implement initiatives aimed at advancing equity, diversity, inclusion in both learning and working environments. Outside of her 9-to-5, Martina enjoys participating in speaking engagements. Martina earned her BA in sociology from York University and her Master's of Professional Education in Equity, Diversity, and Social Inclusion from Western University. Welcome, Danny, Daniela, and Martina. If you have never been to Humber Polytechnic or the University of Guelph Humber, it is a pleasure and honor to have you here today. So to begin, or I was gonna move into icebreakers, if that's okay. Okay, great. I didn't know if you want to say anything, but so welcome. I'm super here to stand here and talk with you today. But we're gonna dive right in. And I'm gonna start with a couple of icebreakers and then move into more serious questions. If you ever feel uncomfortable, you don't need to answer it, no pressure. But I'm gonna start at Danny and then like Daniela and then Martina. Okay? We're all good? All right. So to begin, my first icebreaker, and I think everyone can answer this. If you can eat one cuisine for the rest of your life, what cuisine would it be? Like if you just had to pick one.
Well, for me, I think it would definitely be Thai. I
Mhm.
love Thai food. I think I love Asian inspired food in general, but Thai would definitely be my choice. And I'm actually going there later this year, so I'm looking forward to eat a lot of food.
Oh my gosh, I can't agree enough. Thai. How about you, Danny or Martina? What do you think?
I think for me, I have to go back to my roots and say Venezuelan food.
Mm.
So there's a lot of like corn-based things like arepas and empanadas, but it also encompasses the best of the Caribbean. So there's like fried plantains with like the most delicious cheese. There is really well marinated pork. So it has a little bit of like the tastiest foods in South America, which I can't give up, but I miss it. I'm in Newfoundland right now. We don't have that here, and I miss it terribly.
Oh, hopefully you get some soon. Hopefully you get some soon. And Martina?
Yeah, and for myself, my background is West Indian. I cannot do without my West Indian food, so that is the one food I can't live without.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, this is making me hungry and it's lunchtime. So I'm gonna move on to the next two questions. If you can have a superpower, what superpower would it be and why? So Daniela, Danny, or Martina, I think these are kind of just questions that anyone can answer.
I think as much as this would be a bit overwhelming, I would love the ability to read people's thoughts. Oftentimes I'm always like thinking and wondering like what are other folks thinking and wondering about me. So like I said, it may be overwhelming to be taking in what like people are thinking about me, but I think it would be helpful in terms of how I like navigate like certain relationships.
It's so valid.
Yeah, no, definitely. Honestly, to echo what Martina just shared, I would also like that, to be honest, even though sometimes I'm like, maybe not, because as you said, it could be overwhelming. But I was actually, since I changed it, since you said that, I said I'll be invisible.
You
Sorry, Dan.
took mine, my goodness.
Sorry, Danny. But yes,
That's a good one.
that's what I would do because yeah, then but it's kind of for the same reason because then I can kind of see okay, what's happening over here, what's happening here, and also you can kind of be like that, fly on the wall essentially. So yeah.
Yeah, I think similar to Danielle, invisibility. Number one, I'm nosy. So I want to know what's happening, right? And I want to know what's happening behind closed doors without people noticing me there. But also number two, being visible right now as a minority, it takes a lot of energy, right? Like I just want to break. Like don't look at me. Let me just exist in peace. So it's dual the reason for me.
Nice. And I think all of those are so valid because, well, anything that's like a superpower would be cool. Um, and last one, this one maybe it might take some time, but if you can describe yourself as any ice cream flavor, what flavor would it be and why?
That's a good one. I'm gonna go with an old favorite. Even though now like I like a few different flavors, but I'll go with Jamocha almond fudge.
Okay.
So it was my
Cool.
favorite
Cool.
Baskin Robbins flavor. I'm going way back there. But I feel like it has a little bit of everything, you have some mocha, you have some chocolate, you have some, nuts in there. So yeah, I kind of like it because it's a mixture of a lot of things, which is kind of how I see myself in certain aspects too.
Cool. Awesome.
I would say for me, dulce de leche. So it's kind of like a more smoky caramel. It has that blend of flavor. So it's not like, so boring that it's just vanilla. It just has a little bit more. just has a little bit more of like that smoky taste that blends in really well with other things like cookies and smoothies, etc. Yeah, dulce de leche.
Sorry,
I would have to
no, I was just gonna ask if you can hear my notifications in the background, but it's okay. Sorry, continue.
okay. I would have to say praline and cream because I really love that ice cream, and when I think about it, like it kind of fits who I am. A little bit of sweet, a little bit of salty, and like goes down very smooth. So I feel that fits my personality.
Oh my gosh, all these food conversations and talking about it's getting me hungry. But yeah, I really like what everyone said. A little bit of salty, a little bit of spicy, a little bit of everything. That's awesome. So I'm gonna move on to some of our questions, and I hope so I'm gonna ask Danny and then Danielle and then Martina. Um, so to begin, and also thank you so much for your icebreaker questions. They were phenomenal. So to begin, asking about career conversations, Danny, in what ways has your identity influenced your career choices and professional growth?
Yeah, I think for me, uh, it's first just want to highlight that uh, your identity shouldn't stop anyone from pursuing any kind of line of work. You can do anything. Where it impacted me, it's more choosing about where I will invest my talent and my energy. So it's less about what I do and more about where I do it and who I do it for. And so when I considered different potential employers, I looked for places where I knew I would be safe. And I looked for leaders that understood some of the barriers that I might experience working with them. And so when I was looking at potential workplaces, I looked, what is their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion? When I talked to leaders and they were interviewing me, I interviewed them back. And I said, like, what experience do you have working with trans people? And so my identity and uh, uh, my experiences are valuable, and I can't trust just anyone with that. And so it really led me to be a lot more picky around who I choose to share my gifts with and for.
Amazing answer. I'm speechless because I think that's something that even us struggle with is sharing our identity. But I really appreciate you giving insight on what you have to say because that empowers me. So Danielle, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Okay, well, number one, in terms of how my identity has like influenced my career choices, professional growth, um, I would say in terms of career choices, if I'm being honest, I think my parents, just being new immigrants to Canada, didn't really know how to guide me in terms of telling me which profession to potentially get into. My dad would just say, go ask school, like, but what does that mean, right? What do I take? What do I do? I knew I liked to connect with people, to talk with people. So I honestly just chose social service work at Centennial because I was like, you know what? I like communicating. I like talking to people. Let me do this, right? I'm kind of lucky that I think throughout my journey, I just ended up in the place now where I feel like I'm just very at peace, love my profession, love what I do, don't dread, working on Sunday nights, right? But I do think I had to kind of figure it out, right? So for me, it wasn't just a clear path. It was like I tried a lot of different things because the field of social work is so broad that and that after 10 plus years of working in different areas within the social work stream, I ended up finding like my passion and my purpose. I also feel like as a Black female, right? If I'm being really honest, I remember going to interviews and thinking I have to straighten my hair, right? I have to flat iron my hair before I go to interviews. Like that was way back when I used to feel that way. Now I'm going with my hair however I feel like it. But there was a time where I literally felt like that, right? So to say that didn't affect me in certain ways, okay, I need to get my hair straightened before I go for this interview. I need to do these like things just to feel like you fit in, right? I think it's something that, a lot of people of color in general can probably identify with within their, career journey. So, yeah. And I also will say that I didn't always feel represented in higher level positions because although I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, I definitely knew I wanted to be a boss, right? I wanted to excel in my career. I think I always had an underlying wanting to have my own business. But did I always feel like there was that representation in those types of roles? No. So yeah, so I think that definitely impacted me, but I was lucky that over time I managed to find my way through all of those feelings.
Yeah, so for myself, I have a very, I guess, like similar response to Danielle, right? I didn't I didn't choose intentionally to be in the career that I am today. I kind of just landed here, right? And I would say that my identity as a Black woman, based on the experiences that I had to go through as a student and then as a working professional, um, brought me here to where I am today, right? So, as Danielle, my parents, being immigrants, coming from the West Indies, based on my personality, my father was like, "You are going to be a lawyer." That's what he told me, right? Then it wasn't until undergrad where I was engaging in conversations, like, with different professors around like equity, diversity, inclusion, talking about like race, specifically race in Canada, that really, piqued my interest in, you know, going through a journey on, what it would be like to work in a field where I would be able to engage in conversations and work on initiatives that have to do with things that really impact my life like on a daily basis, whether it's at work, whether it's in my social life, personal life. Like, race is always at the forefront for me. So I would say that it's definitely my identity and the experiences that I went through that kind of like drove me to where I am today. And how did that play a role in my professional growth? Well, I cannot remove my Blackness, right? It's not something that I can hide, right? It's overt, it's in your face. So I had to really grow some thick skin in order to navigate the different working environments that I've been in, especially within higher ed, right? So I think that not just based on education, but engaging in conversations with folks who have like been in this field for some time, who have the experience, who identify as being like racialized or Black, like in higher education environments, definitely played a role in my professional growth in terms of like learning how to navigate this system that, like, as much as I've been given advice in terms of like flying under the radar, you can't necessarily fly under the radar when this is the job that you've been assigned to do, which is like speaking up, advocating on behalf of those who can't advocate for themselves, right? And just being bold and living your authenticity.
Oh, Danny, do you have a question?
I want to add just something as that a thought that Danielle and Martina sparked. I also want to recognize that, especially earlier in our careers, if we have various identities that put us at the margins, sometimes our identity will lead us to make choices that help us just survive, right? And that's okay. It's not fair, but just know that is sometimes part of our experience. So sometimes you will have choices. Other times the choice might be, do I do this job to survive or do I not? And so like if you come to that point, remember like the goal is to survive. Even surviving is resistance, right? So I want to remind people that that's okay. And for example, for me and for like a lot of LGBT people, sometimes the choice is, do I stay in the closet so I can survive today, or do I not? And you might feel a little bit guilty for staying in the closet at that point, but just remember the goal is to survive. So keep that in mind too, that sometimes our identities will lead us to certain points in our life where we have to choose, do I do this to survive or not? And it's okay to choose that. Um, Especially if and hopefully just for the short term until you find something that can allow you to thrive.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate hearing what you have to say because I'm also 21. I'm just starting, got into my master's, and I'm still navigating. Um, and so I really appreciate it. My second question to you is, looking back on your career journey, what is one key lesson you learned about building a professional brand and managing your online presence, and how has it influenced the way you present yourself professionally today? Danny, if you want to take it away, the floor is yours.
Sure. So I think brand can mean different things to different people. And so for me, when I think of like what is a brand, I once heard that a brand is a promise, right? And so when I think of my brand, I think about what is the promise that I make to people that I work for, to people that I work with. And so personally for me, like when I think about like what is it that I bring to every job, regardless of my title, that is, like I am somebody who will build community. I have somebody who will innovate and question the status quo, and I have somebody that will try to help people grow around me and educate them. And so it's really, really, really important that you are in touch with what you bring to the table. So, what promise can you make to employers, regardless of what that title is? And then find ways to communicate it, right? How do we communicate our brand? Number one, by living it. So, making sure that that promise is something that you do keep with everyone that you work with. And make sure that you share that online, right? Make sure that you share those strengths. By participating in different communications. So if community building is something you're passionate about, participate in conversations about that. If training others is something that you're passionate about, maybe it's about like taking moments to educate people around you. So it's for me, it's really about like understanding what it is, what's a promise that you make to people that you work with, and then how do you make sure that you fulfill that promise in different ways.
Thank you. Danielle, you didn't go yet, right?
No, not yet.
Go
All
ahead.
right. Well, thanks, Danny. Actually, I really liked that interpretation, just in terms of a promise that you're making, to the people around you. That's interesting. Yeah. So in terms of that question, how I thought about it in terms of building a personal brand, as mentioned, I did previously work at GH, so big up GH, right? And while there, I actually had to, as a part of my role, actually create a LinkedIn profile. Right. So I kind of say that was the beginning of my professional branding. I know prior to that, I did have a Facebook page and stuff like that. But thank goodness, I think I'm part of that older school set of people where social media became a little bit larger after I had finished my, after I was, kind of finished my heyday, like my party period and whatnot. So I would say that for myself, that became a bigger thing a little bit later. Right. But in terms of managing my personal and online presence, I think everyone needs to create a personal brand. I think that you never know when you will need that and when you will potentially need that network. People can be, I work with a lot of people that have been laid off. I remember my mom was laid off in her 50s from a job she worked for like 30 years, right? If you don't have that network that you've created of, people you've previously worked with, people on, LinkedIn, social media, um, and then then you're in a position where you're out of work. You have to do a lot of work to build that up and to get your name out there, potentially get a new job, to create a new opportunity for yourself. Whereas if you've already been pouring into that, you know, staying in touch with people in your network, posting on LinkedIn. I'm a person who I was on IG as well. And prior to becoming a full-time entrepreneur at ROP, I actually was in a position, but I started a YouTube channel on relationships. And I remember I just was doing all of these things because I said, I know that for what I want to do moving forward, I'm going to need to create my own personal brand. And I don't want to be solely dependent upon my employer because, in my opinion, I think anything can happen. And you want to just always have that there to kind of fall back on, to be totally honest. So for me, yeah, personal branding is huge. And I think also people don't want a perfect person. I don't always, and I think people back in GH, I was in my 20s, I didn't always say the perfect thing. At that point, I think I really in the sense that, you know, we were talking about professionalism and authenticity. Perhaps I was too authentic. I think sometimes I could even, at that time, I probably even rubbed some people the wrong way because I was just very straightforward, somewhat blunt. And I learned to kind of blend that over time and get to a place where I was able to kind of balance the two and feel like I'm still being authentic, but I'm still presenting myself in a professional manner, right? So, and I think that's something that a lot of people, it's a balance. It's a balance, right? And it takes time to find that balance. And I'm not ashamed to say that for me, it took me a while too, right? And I was probably more on the opposite side where I get myself in trouble sometimes for things that I would say or do. But you know what? It was a process and it was a journey. And so if you're on that journey, give yourself some grace. You're gonna mess up sometimes, but you know what? You're gonna figure it out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Danielle. Martina?
Sure, I'll try to keep it short. I think for me, one key lesson I've learned about building my personal brand is that you can't only live it professionally, but you have to live it personally as well too, right? Especially when you have that online presence. And I'm not talking about LinkedIn. I'm talking for those of us who have like Instagram and Facebook, and you have like, friends, family members, colleagues who are kind of like watching your every move. I learned that, very early in my career, I can't just go ahead and post whatever I want to on like Instagram and Facebook. I have to be mindful of like optics, right? If anybody who knows me personally, as well as professionally knows that how like I live, breathe, everything EDI, it shows up in my personal relationships. It shows up in my professional relationships, socially. I'm not just about like talking the talk. I walk the walk as well too, right? And as kind of like Danielle was speaking to, when it comes to the work that I do, people either love you for it or they hate you. Some may tolerate you, right? That's fine, right? So folks know me to be like very outspoken, very vocal, somewhat stubborn, but it works for me, right? And so for me, I think that's like essential to building your personal brand, and in terms of how it has influenced the way in terms of like I present myself professionally today. I am who I am. I mean, I don't hold back. And when I do go for interviews, like I don't shy away from like who I am as an individual and how it shows up in my work, right? So it's either you love me and you hire me for that, or you say, you're not a good fit, and I will happily walk away, because that interview is just not only about them interviewing me, it's about me interviewing them as well too, to see if I'm a great fit for that organization.
Yeah. And all of your responses, as per usual, were incredible and insightful, and thank you so much. All right, so the next question. Have you ever felt an overt or subtle pressure to conform to dominant norms at the workplace? For example, have you ever felt like the need to change or tone down how you speak, dress, style your hair, or interact with colleagues? How do these unwritten norms impact the well-being and success of equity deserving groups. Danny?
Hey, I've been going first the last couple of times, so I'm gonna ask one of my peers to go first if that's okay, because I don't want to overtake the space.
Yeah, sounds good. Do we want to do it reverse? Martina, do you want to go first this time then?
Sure, happy to. This question really triggered something for me, because I think, once I, left university and I started in the workforce, I felt that pressure tremendously, to conform, to dominant, norms within the workplace. And I think it takes time and growth and self-reflection, right? And really getting to understand who you are as an individual and valuing who you are as an individual and valuing like your self-integrity. But it has a huge impact, right? Because, as I was saying before, like, it does play a role in terms of like who likes you, who doesn't like you, and then how you then progress, right? In the workplace, right? So it's challenging, right? But I think that for me, why I had to come to terms with just living in a very like authentic way is because it weighed more on me to perform and be fake, right? Than it did to conform and have things like, be easier, if you want to put it that way. So like Danielle, like very early on in my early 20s, I felt the need to like, straighten my hair, to speak a certain way. I say all this to say that like, but still there's a certain level of like, quote unquote, like professionalism, right? So I resist and I push back in a way that's not going to allow me to do the things that I need to do, right? Because I still want to move that needle just a little bit more, right? But at the same time, I'm still, true to myself. So it does have a huge impact on your well-being, I feel, when you feel like every single day you get up, you have to, fake it to make it, right? So my advice would be like, do the work, so that you are able to like be in these spaces without feeling like you have to perform to be someone else.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I feel like, Danielle, you're going to say something, so I'll just give it to you.
All right. Yeah. Well, I definitely do think, I think by virtue of both of us being Black women, Martina, that we have a lot of overlapping thoughts on a lot of these questions.
Yeah.
But I will say that okay, in terms of the overt or subtle pressure to conform, I definitely did feel the need to, conform in certain ways, like I already spoke about with the hair and things like that. But then I actually feel in other ways, I showed up very authentically earlier on. Like I actually probably didn't, to be honest, I probably didn't even conform enough not to cause myself some issues, right? In the sense that I would be very vocal, as I've said earlier. I would speak out on things that I didn't agree with. I would talk the same way I talked to the janitor as I would speak to the super as the manager, right? And I think sometimes that wasn't always, even though I think that that's the way you should be, I don't think that was always well received, right? Because I think sometimes people would think I was questioning their authority. Oh, she's kind of rude. She's this or she's that, right? So I, as I said, I do believe that was a journey, and that eventually I was able to really like still be authentic, but learn to manage that better. And do I believe that it held me back at that time? Definitely. Definitely. Right. I actually remember one job in particular was a very in my early 20s. It was a summer job position offered through HRDC. I don't know if anyone remembers those jobs, But one of the bosses came in and she was wearing something, and she said, "Oh, Danielle, do you like this outfit?" And everyone was like, "Okay, so is Danielle the fashionista or the fashion police?" And she's like, "No, Danielle will tell me the truth." Because she knew that I'm gonna say, if I like it, I will say I do. If I don't, I'll say nope. It doesn't look good to me. But and then I kind of am like, now, why isn't that a strength too? Right? To be authentic, to be someone that people knows is gonna tell them the truth. I feel like now even with clients, right? A lot of clients had said, "You know what, you called me out the other day, but I loved it because I needed that call out. I needed you to tell me the truth about that situation." So also it's some things that, like, I'm just telling everyone, some things that some other people might think is negative, right? Remember, those probably are, like, sometimes they are actually positive aspects about yourself. You just need to learn how to perhaps deliver it in a more palatable way, right? So I'll just leave it.
I think to add to what's already been said, I just want to share a quick story. Um, I was in a previous role, and I remember I was talking to a colleague about my weekend. I said, I had a fantastic weekend. It was like a Monday, right, or a Friday. Fantastic weekend. I went out with friends. We saw drag queens. We danced with the drag queens. We flirted with the drag queens. We tipped them. We had a couple of drinks with them. We had a fantastic time. Really, really good weekend, right? And for me, I was just sharing what we did over the weekend as we usually do on the beginning of the week. Uh, a couple days later, uh, that colleague went to one of my leaders and complained that I made them very uncomfortable uh, through that conversation. And for me, the lesson that that moment taught me was connected to authenticity, but for me, it really made me just be more mindful about who I let into different parts of my life, right? And so I would say that when it comes to the pressure to conform and the pressure to follow particular guidelines, that's how I try to frame it for myself is I am myself, regardless of where I am. But it is more about being a little pickier about who I let into different parts of my life, who I let into uh, different parts of my sense of humor, right? And so it's really led me to just be more mindful and more picky about that. So I would say that especially as you move into new workplaces, take a little bit of time to observe different people, to observe what they're into, and choose. Do you want to let them in? And if you don't want to let them in, that's fine too. They are going to miss out on that particular part of who you are.
Yeah. And you have like a really good point there because you are your true and authentic self, right? We should all be proud of our true and authentic self. So moving on to the next question, maybe we'll start off with Danielle this time. Imposter syndrome. This is something I go through, but the question is, imposter syndrome often makes individuals feel like they don't deserve success or that they're not as competent as others perceive them to be. What are some practical steps or techniques you recommend for individuals to build confidence and combat self-doubt in their daily lives? Danielle?
Ooh. Well, that's a loaded question, but I think yeah, a lot of even clients come to me about that. But I think in terms of like just self-doubt and self-confidence, just speak positivity, into yourself. I start off the mornings, I do positive affirmations. I think it's a good way just to build yourself up, right? Because often as people like within within these various groups, right? There's a lot of stereotypes placed upon us, right? So of course, when we're entering into roles that were traditionally occupied by other people, we feel like, am I supposed to be here? Am I qualified to be here? Right. But if I'm being totally honest, and I'm just gonna, keep it real as usual. What I started to do is honestly, in a lot of, in a lot of positions and roles, and while I've had, great management and great, people that were supervising me, sometimes I'd have supervisors that I'm like, I feel like I could do this job better than you. So why am I afraid to apply for that position? Right? If I'm being totally honest, right? Oftentimes there are these people in these positions, and it's not to say that you're not just as qualified, just as able to do these positions, but we are having that negative self-talk. We are telling ourselves that we don't fit that mold in whatever that mold is in our minds, right? So, some practical steps too that I would say to keep note of is keep note of those positives. When, for me, when clients tell me that they've made a breakthrough, in previous jobs, when I would do a presentation or something that went well, I would keep it in actually like a folder that would say like good stuff, right? And that's because I want to be able to also come back to that to remind myself, oh no, you are doing this, So when those thoughts creep in, what it is, it's just a process of just reminding yourself of the things that you are doing well, and of the things that you have done, because I think sometimes we focus too much on where we lack instead of where we really have a lot of power.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Pass it on to Danny.
Sure. Um, I think just to jump right into the practical steps, um, you will have moments, right, when you have imposter syndrome where you doubt yourself. I would say before you even get there, connect with people who are like you, right? Find your crew. Um, Even right now, like I work completely remote, I've spent time to find like who are the people that I connect with, who are the people who see me, and who are the people that not just see me, but I also respect their opinion, right? And once you find those people, you just don't need many, you just need one or two. Once you find those people, then you can really be each other's cheerleaders. You can really push each other to grow. And when you have your moments of doubt, you can lean on them and say, "Hey, like, am I wrong here? Am I, completely disconnected from what's happening, or am I on the right track?" And right now, I'm really, really, really grateful that one of those people is my boss right now. And I do often ask her, I'm like, can you just, I'm doubting myself right now. Can you just reassure me that I did the right thing? Can you just reassure me that my intuition was correct? And when you find those people, they will do that, or they will say, "Actually, Danny, you are completely off. This is why." But I would say that's the first strategy is once you start working, find your people. And again, not just people that are going to agree with you, but people that you respect and that will disagree with you when you're not in the right. I think it's also important um, to ask yourself, like Danielle said, what do they got that I don't? Right? And most of the time, not much, right? Most of the time, you will be overqualified for that particular project, for that particular opportunity. The only thing that they got that you don't is audacity. And then it is up to you to find that audacity and act upon it. But when you take a real hard look at the qualifications specifically, you'll notice that you're often uh, on par or ahead of people around you. And the last piece that I'll drop here is, how do you battle imposter syndrome? Keep growing, keep learning, stay ahead of the curve, right? Keep yourself informed. It is very easy for most people to just fall into the routine, just fall into their day to day, and that's how you get stale, right? So really try to stay ahead of the people around you by staying in touch around the conversations that are happening right now in your particular field, whether that is by watching free webinars, whether that is by, like following influencers in the space that are ahead of the field. But really like stay up to date and stay ahead of the curve will help you fight those moments when you feel like an imposter.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Martina.
Sure. Just to add to like what Danny and Danielle have said, after doing a lot of work around like imposterism, because it is something that I struggled with in my earlier years, and I just got a friendly reminder about it today. Like imposterism, it's not really about you. I'm just gonna be straight up. It's about the environment. The environment is the imposter. These institutions and organizations, including higher education, that have all these like EDIA, EDIAB, whatever acronym you want to use, commitments and missions and statements, like they claim that they are here to support and create an environment that is to be inclusive and etc. But in reality, that's what it's not, right? If you actually like look into the literature around like EDIA, EDIB, right? You're gonna see who it's really for in the long term, right? So I have to put that out there, like that we should not allow ourselves to be gaslit into believing that we are the issue. It's the environment, right? The environment that says that they are here for us equity deserving folks, right? But is it really truly here for us? And then another thing that I just wanted to add was that we need to like stop looking for outward validation and just learn to validate ourselves, right? And to speak on what Danny said, like, find your people, right? Truly find your people who are going to support you, who are going to uplift you. But also, once again, it's about doing that internal work. I could care less if my supervisor doesn't say, oh, yeah, you did great on that particular project, right? Because at the end of the day, the feedback that I receive from the people or the audience that it's intended for is what means more to me than hearing that from my supervisor, right? It's about the impact that it has on the people that it's supposed to have an impact on. So I would just like to say once again, like the imposter is not us, but it's in the environment itself.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And yeah, that's a lot of great advice. All of you shared. Thank you. So two more questions, if that's okay with all of you. We'll start off with Martina this time. How do you define professionalism? And in your experience, how can students balance this with staying true to their authentic selves in the workplace?
That's a really good question because, professionalism is really tied up in like westernized thought and Eurocentrism. Um, there's been a lot of conversations around it and trying to like embed like indigenous ways, right, in terms of how we view professionalism, right, and how that's measured. So I think for me that like professionalism, it is subjective, right, and it also takes into consideration like respect for oneself and others, right. In terms of how students can balance this with staying true to their authentic selves, I think this goes back to a lot of what we were saying in like the responses to some of like the earlier questions that were asked, right? If you feel like you have to perform or be fake in order to make it, right, then it's eventually going to weigh on your mental health, your mental well-being, right? So I think there are, some things that you can say one is supposed to be aware of. But when we talk about like being authentic, bringing your true self, then that means bringing myself as I am, right? And sometimes like how I come may not fit within that framework of like professionalism. So I think Naisha, it's a tricky question, right? Because how I may define professionalism as an individual, like society doesn't define it that way. These workplaces that we work in may not define it that way, right? Because if I was to come in my cultural wear and wear an afro, I can tell you this much, I'm probably not going to get like, you know, the jobs that I'm applying to, right? So I feel like it's for these institutions, right, to rework the ideal of like what professionalism is so that it's applicable to all and not just some. So I don't think I answer the question exactly, right? Because it's tricky, right? Because like professionalism, unfortunately, doesn't see someone that looks like me as being like professional unless I come dressed and speak in a certain way.
Yeah. And yeah. And thank you for sharing, Martina. Danielle, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, I was actually going to start by just saying, in terms of professionalism, yeah, it's so interesting how you described it, Martina, because I was just thinking I don't even like that word because, as you said, it's so subjective. It is like what is quote unquote, being professional, right? I think, just like you said, I actually wrote it down. I wrote a little put note for myself. I wrote, are you good at your job? Are you, doing your best at work? Are you respectful to the people around you? And are you respectful of yourself? Then I think you're a professional. Honestly, that is kind of what I define as, that would be my definition of professionalism. And are you showing up in like, when I say, are you doing your job, are you showing up, like, are you responsible? For myself, I would say, am I responsible in terms of how I handle my clients, right? Am I responsible in terms of the people that are interning with me, and the therapists that work, for me? Like, that's how I would measure professionalism, right? Because I think you can appear to be very professional, appearances alone, that doesn't mean that you actually are. So that's how I would define
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot to add, but I'll try, or maybe I'll illustrate some of what's already been said with the story. I love stories. Um, I was hanging out with somebody that I respect recently. Might even call them a mentor. And they said, "Oh, Danny, like I know I'm gonna say something. I know that you really care about like looking professional and being professional, and I just thought I'd let you know that you have I'm noticing a couple wrinkles in your forehead that you might want to address. And again, I'm just letting you know because I know that you care about professionalism." So, clear illustration that professionalism means different things to different people, right? And often it has nothing to do with the quality of the work that you're doing. And this is somebody that meant well, right? And unfortunately, like this illustrates what many people think is considered professional, right? Is do you have wrinkles? Do you have gray hair? Um, are you light skinned enough, right? Or are you too dark skinned and therefore considered unprofessional in the workplace? And so when I hear the word professionalism, my ears immediately perk up because I'm like, what are you trying to say, really? Right? And do I need to internalize that, or can I just dismiss that as they're projecting rules that have been put upon them that they think they need to put on me as well? And so, like, very much like Danielle, when I went, like, my personal definition of professionalism is, am I doing the job well? Right? So, am I producing good quality work? Am I doing it in a way that's respectful to myself and respectful to others? And respectful to others also means respecting their boundaries, right? So, if somebody doesn't want to hear about me talking about drag queens, then I'm not going to share that part of the world my world with them because I'm respecting their boundaries, right? And so I really, really, really want to just reiterate what Danielle and Martina have said around the word professionalism. Question it, right? And at the end, ask yourself, are you doing a good job in a way that honors who you are and also respectful of people around you?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And on to our last question. Um, what advice would you give others who are looking to embrace and leverage their unique identities? We'll start with who did we start with last time? Did we start with Martina? Do we want to start with Danielle? And then whoever wants to respond next can.
Okay. So it was to embrace and leverage their unique identities, right? Okay. Okay. So in terms of number one, I always tell people you need to think about what is, what are the unique qualities that you bring to the table, right? I usually do an exercise with a lot of people I work with who are just struggling in terms of kind of figuring out what they want to do in life. I go through some purpose questions with them where I ask them like, what do you love? What are you good at? What does the world need? How could you make money? Um, how what are some ways in which you could potentially use some of those things to create income for yourself? Not to say that you have to, but I think the best way to work is if you can be doing something that you are truly enjoying, as we spend most of our waking hours, at work, right? So you might as well be doing something that you enjoy. So I think that everyone does have unique qualities, and really, if you don't know what they are, because I think a lot of people, when you ask them, they actually say, I don't know what are my unique qualities. I say, ask the people around you, ask the people that love you, ask the people around you that you trust, what do they see in you? Because often they'll be able to tell you something. They'll be able to tell you, oh, I think you're good at this, oh, I think you're stellar at this. And that's really, because I think everything is just the way you view yourself. So sometimes you need to pull that, you need to get the people around you, as I think Danny mentioned earlier, to kind of tell you sometimes, those people that you trust. I think that's another way that you can really pull out your unique qualities, to then produce more opportunity for yourself, to leverage yourself to. I remember one time I'll say a story too. I was standing at a bus stop after I had just finished, I think it was college. And I was coming back from a job interview, and I ended up seeing a girl that I was in school with at the bus stop. And she's like, oh, hey, I'll be honest, a lot of people call me Danny too. So she was like, hey, Danny, where are you coming from? And I told her, and she's like, oh, you're good at presenting. You'll probably get the job. But I remember that just felt so nice, because it was someone else who's not a close friend to me or anything, but someone else telling me what they see in me. Because at that point, I don't know that I was so aware of that. So I would just say sometimes other people can also help you with that if you can't identify those things for yourself. And then once you recognize what you're good at, I think try to put yourself in positions to do this whenever. Yeah.
Thank you. Martina, do you want to take it away? Or I didn't know if Danny was...
Yeah, probably Danny.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Danny.
Sure. So I'm gonna echo a lot of what Danielle said. I think that the first one is absolutely being in touch with your strengths, right? Your unique identities will give you unique perspectives and unique strengths that are really, really valuable. And we unfortunately exist in a world that's every day trying to tell you that you don't deserve what's in front of you. It's going to try to tell you that you are less for different reasons. And so by being in touch with your strengths and what you bring to the table, you're going to be a lot less. It's going to be a lot harder to shake you and to really put you in a place where you question who you are. So I think that the first one is absolutely being in touch with your strengths. And like Danielle said, if you don't know what they are, ask people around you, ask previous bosses, ask professors that you trust. That's going to be like key in really leveraging what you have. First, you need to know what you have before you leverage it. The second piece, like I mentioned before, safety first, right? There will be points in your life where you're going to have to make a choice that you may not love, but it's what's going to lead you to survive, right? Like it is okay to choose survival in those moments because by surviving those moments, you will be able to exist for tomorrow and leverage your identities then. But it is okay to make the choice to kind of use the survival to make it to tomorrow. And I would say like last, when it comes to looking at your next career moves, the space that you work in makes a big difference. So as Martina already said, when it comes to things like imposter syndrome, there's going to be places that are going to make it easier for you to doubt yourself, which is not ideal, right? So do try your best to do your homework. When it comes to the culture, are they going to boost you in this workplace, or are they going to make you doubt yourself? When you're interviewing your leader, it's good to, ask them questions about how they support their workers, how they support people when they make mistakes, right? So do they have an appetite to learn, right? From the people that work for them, with them. So doing your homework about the space that you're going to be working in, it's going to be really important to make sure that it's a space where you can flourish versus a space that's going to take away your light, which is not what we want when we're leveraging who we are at work.
And of course, last but not least, Martina.
Thank you. I guess my advice would be like, in order to embrace like who you are inside and out, right? Once again, it goes back to doing that internal work, right? You gotta love yourself. You gotta respect yourself, and that can't be dependent on, any other person but like you, right? So in order to get to that step of like embracing yourself, right? You have to do that like internal work, right? And I know Danielle, you're in social work, so you can talk more so about that like on a therapy/counseling level, right? And then once you're able to like embrace who you are, then you could leverage like your unique identities to propel yourself to the next level, but also to pull others up with you who have similar identities to you, right? Once again, it goes back to like not just like the talk, but walking it as well too, right? So for my young racialized like sisters, Black sisters, right? Like I can't just say this is what you need to do that I'm not doing it, right? I have to lead by example. So with that being said, like, take, some of the experiences that you've gone through and turn that into like strengths. That's a part of your brand. That's your story. It makes you who you are, right? I just want to say that kind of like speaking to what Danny was saying, like it's okay sometimes to do things in order to survive, because let's just keep it real. Like we are all doing this work, yes, because we love it and we're passionate about it, but it is also our livelihood, right? This is how I take care of my family. It's my bread and my butter, right? So I like carefully and I pick and choose very wisely. Like, do I want to like, really get into this today with this particular person who was respectful to me? Like, is it worth it? Or can I do this in like another way? Right. And we also hear this piece around like, code switching. You need to know when to code switch, right? You have to be very strategic. And that comes with like, time and experience, right? But I think the biggest thing here is you have to do that self-reflection work, right? You have to do that self-love work, because you can't move into these other pieces of trying to like advocate for others where you're not able to even advocate for yourself.
If I can just add something super, super, super quickly, because that internal work, it's now been said 3 times. You don't have to do it alone, right? Especially if you're a student, I guarantee that you have access to mental health services through your institution, and so like access it. I have been, shamelessly going to therapy for the past 12 years, and it is through therapy that I've been able to unlearn some of the messages that I've been hearing all my life. All those messages that say that I shouldn't exist, that I don't deserve what I have in front of me. It's taken 12 years to learn through therapy. So if that's an option for you, And if you feel like you need some of that support to do that internal work, take it. Take it while you can, because that can make a really big difference in the way that you leverage who you are. So therapy, therapy, therapy. If you're privileged enough to have access to it, take it. Healing from within. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. And thank you so much, all of you, Danielle, Martina, and Danny. It was amazing hearing your responses, and for me, it definitely hit me as well because I'm a student. I'm still trying to navigate in the workplace, navigate in my education, and I really appreciate your motivation, support, and just being there for me. So awesome. Thank you so much for coming out. Thank you so much for your responses and advice. Breaking the mold as a career conversation is incredibly important, and a huge thank you to Denny, Danielle, and Martina for being here with us. Even more, a bigger thank you to the Office of Equity, Diversity, Inclusivity, and Belonging at Humber Polytechnic for putting this event together. It's a pleasure to be here today as a moderator. I'm going to pass this back on to Anna, and I think she's going to do closing.
Hi, everyone. My name's Anna, pronounced she, her. I've been one of the people who put this panel together. I'm so excited to have witnessed this amazing conversation. Thank you so much. I'm here to open space up for a Q&A. We have about 15, maybe 14 minutes. And please feel free to share your questions in the Q&A tab on your meeting window, where I can review and publish them, and I will read them out to the panelists for you as well. I think our slide also says that you can raise your hand, but I'm pretty sure, as this is a webinar, the attendees don't actually have access to the microphone. So the questions would need to be typed. Please type your questions. I'll be very happy to share them. We have 2 questions already. And it's interesting because we ended on the note of speaking about exploring ourselves and taking care of our mental health. So one of the first questions in this panel is exactly around that. So I'm going to read it out and see which of our amazing panelists want to respond to that. So an anonymous asked, what would you suggest to someone who is struggling with anxiety as part of their disability and is being seen, and that is being seen as a weakness, and in some cases accused of being unprofessional when I haven't been able to overcome, I guess, the anxiety, right? How can we still be seen as professionals, but also emotional, especially as women? It's a big question with many parts. Is there anybody who would volunteer to address it? Danielle, please. I don't think we hear you, Danielle. Oh, there we go.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, honestly, when you're going through anxiety, it can show up in so many different ways, right? So I'll be honest, it would be kind of helpful to understand how it's showing up for her at work, but I'm assuming that maybe this is resulting in like missed deadlines, things like that. I'm assuming that are kind of being, and then that's kind of resulting in her being viewed as, unprofessional, et cetera, et cetera. I think number one, especially if it's really getting to a point where you believe it's like it is impacting your work, maybe also it's time to have that conversation with your, supervisor or whomever, just to kind of, allow, like, let them know that this is occurring, right? Perhaps you may need to check in with either your general practitioner, like your doctor, or perhaps get, your therapist if you have a therapist, even to back you in that if you need it, because I think that unfortunately not everyone is savvy in that way to understand that what you are experiencing is a result of the anxiety, right? And it's not, do you know what I mean? Like some people don't know how to differentiate that and know what are, signs and symptoms to look out for. So sometimes, unfortunately, you may have to kind of be your own advocate in a sense, in terms of just having that conversation, especially if it's, affecting your your work. But other things that you can do is also connect with your therapist to even get some coping mechanisms, ways that you can practice mindfulness within the workday, some breath work, going on walks, ways to kind of reduce your anxiety, while you are in, especially your workspaces. But those are just a few little tips, and they're more than welcome to, reach out to me too if you want some more. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Danielle. Would Martina or Danny want to tackle this one? Go ahead,
I'll
Danny,
try.
please, first.
So as Danielle said, if this is something that's impacting, your quality of life, and it's impacting your performance at work, then 500% let your boss know that it's something that you are mindful of, that you're working on, and then seek support. There are lots of services out there that can help you with this piece. And I would say, so I'm somebody who has suffered from anxiety, who has experienced anxiety all of my life to this day. And the goal is not to eliminate anxiety, right? Like anxiety can actually, it's a pretty powerful tool once you learn to work with it. Like anxiety, it really, for me, like it helps me predict the worst case scenario, and then it helps me prepare for that worst case scenario, right? The key is a place where you can work within and with, not like over your experiences at work, at home, etc. And so, like I would say, as Danielle said, seek support to help tame it, right? To help bring down like the temperature, and then it's about leveraging it, right? It's not what you can do for anxiety; it's what anxiety can do for you. Because once you learn to be better friends with it, it can be a really powerful tool that can help you prepare for things that other people don't see. So I'll leave it there. But first, support to help bring down the temperature, and it's about how to become friends with it, so you can use it as a tool that can be very powerful.
Thank you so much, Danny. This is such an interesting take and such a positive take on anxiety to be able to try to befriend it, because we're scared of anxiety and try to eliminate it, right? So that is a refreshing way to think about it. Thank you. And Martina, if you have anything to add, feel free to, but also we have other questions. Up to you.
No, I'm totally fine. We can move on to the next question.
All right, no worries. We have another question in the chat, and I think it's for Danielle, but I'm sure everyone can also chime in. So Danielle talked about being your authentic self. Authenticity versus safety in the workplace can be tough to navigate as a new professional. Other than finding your people, how can new grads navigate this and build confidence?
Okay. I think this was mentioned previously as well, but I think honestly, because I'll be honest, even though I talked a lot about getting it wrong, there was a point where I got it right. And I had like a workplace experience for like 5 years. I had no issues. I was actually, got along well with my supervisor. Like it was smooth. And I think I got to a place where I was, I'll be honest, I was kind of tired. I didn't really feel like planning anymore. Right. And because of that, I did kind of have to learn to get by. Like when, even though something's happening, maybe that's not, exactly what I would like or what I think is fair. I kind of have to pick and choose too. Is this something worth me making and this an issue out of? Right. So I do think sometimes we do have to practice that, that discernment in terms of picking and choosing, like, is this something I really want to make an issue? I think you really have to decide when something is like, okay, no, this is actually totally inappropriate and I do need to address this, versus this is something slightly annoying, but it's going to take me 15 minutes so I can do it. Right. So it's like balancing that, because I get it. Wanting to be your authentic self, as I've said many times, I'm someone who's very very I think I show up this like similarly, no matter where I am and who I'm with. Obviously, yes, if I'm talking to, I don't know, my 16-year-old cousin in New York versus, a prof, I might change the wording a little bit, but in terms of, myself, I try to show up similarly. But you do have to practice safety in the workplace because I think, as Danny has mentioned many times, for a lot of us, sometimes we need this to exist. We need this to pay our bills. Maybe, you're just like, hypothetically, maybe you're in a position where you really, really need this job. You really do have to pick and choose. I think you can still practice being your authentic self, but doing it within a way that will not cause you problems. Before you do something, I actually would say to stop, pause, and think about, is this going to be something that my future self is going to be like, oh yeah, I should have done that? Or are you going to think, I could have, handled that differently. I could have approached it in a more different way. I could have said it in a more palatable way. So I think it's just about that. It's balancing that. Yeah. And
Thank you, Danielle.
in time and
Oh, go
experience.
ahead.
Yeah, and I think in time and with more experience, you'll start to build that confidence. You'll start to feel like you get better at it because, yeah, I can be a poster child for that. It took me a while, but I got there eventually.
Thank you so much, Danielle. And it is such an important point, and it's been mentioned a few times that every day we navigate through the battles, right? It sounds like it's a process that wherever you're at your career happens. Thank you. Danny, Martina, would you like to address the question?
Sure. What was the question again? It's around safety in the workplace.
Navigating professionalism as a new grad, specifically, and having that confidence, building that confidence. I can read it out again.
Yeah, sure.
If you'd like me to, absolutely. Daniel talked about being an authentic self. Authenticity versus safety in the workplace can be tough to navigate as a new professional. Other than finding your people that I think Danny mentioned, how can new grads navigate this and build confidence? So I think we've addressed this not me. You've addressed this quite a bit. So if there are any final thoughts, we'd be happy to hear.
No, I feel that like I addressed it. Like, yes, finding your people is important. Doing that self work and, you know, just really building confidence, in yourself, right? But as both Daniel and Danny spoke to, right, it's how you do this, right? You kind of like have to figure it out as you go, right? Because you have to be mindful of the fact, like, the work that you're doing is for survival, is how you're going to take care of yourself, right? So I used to, like, I'm still a very vocal person, but I would say this, that I think before I react, and I never react on emotion anymore. Whereas before, like when I started off in my career, my emotions got like the best of me. All right. So I think that's something that I would, leave as advice for any, new grad that's entering the workplace, that if you want to tackle an issue or a concern, do it once you've taken the time to kind of like, calm down and reflect on how you could strategically like approach that conversation. Because how you approach it is going to determine like if it's going to benefit you or if it's going to work against you.
Thank you. We're pretty much at time, and I do have a couple more things to say. Danny, if there is anything, if you could very briefly. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for this wonderful, wonderful advice to all of us, not even only the students. Could we please go to the next slide? Nathan? All right. So after thanks to the panelists, we have a little thank you shout out slide for us, the planning committee who put the panel together. So here it is me, Anna Requiashvili, and we have Jonathan Fuentes. Are you here, Jonathan? We have Michelle Marfa, Nafiza Kadir and Natasha Cortez. Thank you, amazing team, for bringing this panel to us and to ourselves. Could we go to the next slide, please? And this is the last bit. I'm not sure if you're hearing the sickness in my household. It's happening. I think it's happening everywhere. That's for that. The last bit is to ask you to please scan the QR code and give us feedback about this workshop. We are very, very looking forward to receiving your feedback. It's really important to us. And once you complete your survey, you will be directed to a webpage that you can enter a draw for $100 or $300 grant prize. So there is a big incentive there. And also make sure to check our resources and other upcoming events. And that is it from me. Thank you, everyone. And I hope you have a great afternoon and get your lunch.